Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of our podcast today, where we're going to talk about 17 years ago. I woke up this morning and realized that 17 years ago, there was a catastrophe that happened here in New Orleans and on the Gulf Coast, Hurricane Katrina. And I started to think a lot about what that process was and what we did. And it's really a kind of a crazy story. And so, to reminisce 17 years and where we've come and the fact that we made it through it, and just to kind of retell that story again, I hope you guys enjoy.
I'm really curious to hear some of the stories that Shawn's going to tell us today because I have a feeling he has some crazy ones. Yeah. 17 years ago, I was 5 years old when Hurricane Katrina hit.
Holy moly.
And thankfully, my family, we aren't from New Orleans. We're from Prairieville, so, it's about almost 2 hours away. So I don't think we flooded. I think we were just out of power. And I just remember, one of our neighbors, they had just moved in because they were from New Orleans. Their entire house was underwater. So I'm curious to hear, it
was crazy.
New Orleans native here. How did this?
Yeah, there was a tragic loss that happened. There was obviously the loss of people's property and the craziness within the business, but also it was a very sad time for myself and my family because, when Hurricane Katrina came, everybody had to evacuate, and my parents, and so there's four of us. I have an older brother, myself, my younger brother Scott, my younger brother Mike, and then my sister Tara. And, my parents and my brothers had kind of evacuated to Watercolor, Florida, right in the Panhandle, right? And so, my sister's baby, I think, was right about 1 year old, or maybe a little less than a year old. And she was going back to bring a rental car back to turn in. And she turned out onto the highway and I guess didn't see an 18-wheeler, and it hit her and killed her with my parents in the car behind her. And so my dad is the one who actually took her out of the car and held her in his arms, when she died. So it was a really kind of, that was like a tragic, really tragic thing. But the rest, it was just a crazy time in general, man, just because the city was, it was just in complete chaos. Yeah. Yeah. So Angelina and I, my wife, had left town. The hurricane was out in the Gulf. It hadn't hit Miami yet, or maybe it was passing through Miami. And we were actually heading to the MTV Music Awards that weekend. Back then, I don't think they even have that anymore, but the MTV Music Awards back in the early 2000s was a really big deal, yeah. Right? And so we had decided to go out there. It was in Miami, and it had just passed through Miami when we got there, and we were staying somewhere on Collins Avenue at this brand new hotel. And I remember when we got to the hotel, they had planted, it was a brand new hotel. They had planted all these palm trees, these big tall palm trees that are in Miami, and they were all knocked over. And I'm like, what's going on? They're like, this is the hurricane came through here. It came through quick. It didn't sit here, but man, it did a lot of wind damage, right? So I'm in Miami. The Katrina hits, right? It's the night of the MTV Music Awards. We get into our hotel about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, turn the TV on, and we realize that the levees had broken and there's a real disaster happening now, right? And so, yeah, we were in Miami, and it just so happened back then, our business, we were in the direct mail business, but we actually would do big events for dealerships all over the country, car dealerships, and we would do their advertising, but we would also send in a group of people to go work during the event, right? It's called a super sale. We were a big player in that super sale business. And that week we were doing probably 80 to 90 events a month. And that week where it hit, we're always planning 2 weeks ahead because there's direct mail. But that week, we had like 20 something events in one week. And so we don't have, New Orleans is shut down. All of our staff is there. All of our servers, back then we didn't use Amazon. We weren't in the cloud. We had local hosting in our building, and I'm in Miami. You can't get back, so we had to fly an alternative city. We flew into Houston. We drove into Baton Rouge because that's as far as you could go.
Right.
And thank God, Mike's who's our CMO, and Mike and I have been working together for 17, 18 years, he was, his father had a business in Baton Rouge. And so we're scrambling, trying to figure, what do we do with our employees? Where do we house them? How are we going to get these jobs out, right? Because our print facility, my brothers own a print facility, was also in New Orleans. And so all of our printing went through them. We were printing millions of pieces of direct mail a month, millions of pieces. So we're staring down the barrel like business, the rest of the country, life was just going on as normal, right?
Right, but for New Orleans.
That wasn't the case. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so...
Well, so, wait, when you were in Miami, like, did you know... Was it, I was so young. Was it in the news? And so, we didn't know how bad it was going to hit New Orleans. Like, what was going through your mind as you're watching this play out on the television? All of your other employees are in New Orleans or right outside of New Orleans. Yeah. What was going through your mind? Because I feel like I would have been in a state of like, holy crap.
Yeah. It was an oh shit moment, dude. We're sitting up there, and my mother-in-law, we had Caleb was less than 1 year old, and we had brought my mother-in-law and our son with us. And when we got back, she was up, and I'm like, why is she up at 2 or 3? Because we were out partying all night, right? We were out having fun with P. Diddy and all these other people. And so she's like, you got to go look at the TV. And when we lit it was like the levees had broke, while we were out, and the water was pouring into the city. And so at that point, because New Orleans has taken hurricanes, but never has the levees broke where the entire city was underwater, basically, Yeah. So, it was like, holy crap, what do we do? And I think the next morning we got up. We couldn't get out of town. We couldn't get a flight back in. I think I got in touch with Mike and said, hey, man, what are we going to do? His dad had a business in Baton Rouge. His dad said, I can, you guys can work out of my office. I don't have a ton of staff here right now. And then we secured, I don't know who's the one that did it, but then we secured housing for all of our employees, right? We went and rented houses, and we had a place for all of our employees to go. And so we all just moved up the road about an hour, right? And so what's real crazy, though, so I get into town. So if you can think about this, no, we didn't have cloud hosting, so we're not with Amazon. Our servers are in our building. The building's underwater. You can't, they had the Army National Guard that was protecting the city. The city was under quarantine, basically. And so you couldn't get in. So I had gotten... I was leaving. We were in Baton Rouge, and I said, we got to go get our server because that's where all of our jobs were. That's where all of the deals were. And so we came down Airline Highway all the way in, and my brother's print facility is in Kenner, right past the airport. So we came in Airline Highway all the way down, and then we got to a roadblock right by James. There's a business park called James Business Park on Airline, not that far past the airport. Well, we get to the checkpoint, they won't let us through. We can't talk our way through. And what my brothers had done a few nights before is they had left at dark. They had basically got all these provisions like clothes and tennis shoes and towels and food. And then they had gone the same route I did, but at nighttime, they went to the levee and they got on top of the levee with their vehicle, and they came in behind the checkpoint and then came back in to get there. So then they found someone from Entergy that happened to be out there checking the lines, and they paid him money to go hook their facility up first, right? So now they've got a place that is working. They were housing all the Kenner SWAT team. So all the police were working 20 hours a day, 22 hours a day, and they basically would come back to the print facility. My brothers would feed them. They had cots and air mattresses so they could get some rest, and they were back out on the streets. And so that became like a hub for the rescue operations and for law enforcement and all. So they came up on the levee and made it through the checkpoint, right? Got around the checkpoint. I get to the checkpoint, it was during the day, and I couldn't get through. So James Business Park, I realized we could go in James Business Park. It could go all the way to the back of that property. There's a railroad tracks, and I could go over the railroad tracks. I could walk down the railroad tracks and come back in my brother's facility, right? Well, because I needed to get there because they had a vehicle there. And so this was step one. So this was only step one of the journey. The problem is we get dropped off. You couldn't, text messaging and all hardly even work because the cell phone towers were all jammed.
Nobody had service.
Yeah, nobody had service. So we realized there's about a 20-foot canal that we just didn't see when we were in the parking lot to get to, and we go in the canal. There's water moccasins. There's all this stuff. And so we have our cell phones, and we got to go swim in this freaking horrific looking water to get to the railroad track.
These are probably like what, the BlackBerry or like
it was
the
flip phones.
phone?
Yeah, it was the flip phones. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly when it was. I think some people had BlackBerries, but most people had flip phones. So then we had to get in this water. So we undressed as much as we could. We held like it over our head, and we just kind of swam to the other side, came up the railroad tracks, and came back into my brother's business. And that's when it really got kind of crazy, because we took a vehicle, and we said we're going to go to our office. There was 3 or 4 of us in the vehicle as a truck. We're going to go break in our office, get up to our floor, and go get the servers, right? Well, we get to our building, and the building cop was there. So we're trying to get in. We're trying to get in, and we're shimmying the lock, and then finally we broke the window to get in. Well, this guy, we turn around after we broke the window, and we got a gun to our head. And I'm like, oh, my God. And it was the cop that watched the building, right? So we had already gone up and got the server. We came down, and we were leaving the building. We come out of the door, and there's a guy.
He probably thought that y'all were looters.
We were looters, yeah. And I'm like, hey, man, we have our building here. He said, but you can't be here. And
I'm like, I'm just trying to save my company.
Yeah, I said, listen, man, we had to get here. He said, I know, but you're not allowed to be here, And he didn't know that we broke the window or anything to get in. And so, and so we got our server and came back to Baton Rouge, and it was just the most insane time, because we're trying to manage all of these events. We had 20-something events going on all across the country. We had 200 independent contractors that we had to traffic all over the place to all these events. Our printer was out of business at this point, so we need to find a printer that can handle this volume of mail in a short period of time. And we wound up pulling through it, man, like a champ, dude. And
so there's two big events. Hurricane Katrina, which affected the entire city of New Orleans. Whether your house went under or not, it definitely changed your life.
Yeah.
So we had Hurricane Katrina 17 years ago. 2 years ago, we had the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it was a similar situation, whereas these catastrophic events, if you're a business owner, you're sitting there like, I have two choices right now.
Yeah.
Sink or swim.
That's it.
What am I going to do? I got to think on my feet.
Yeah.
And so somehow you've managed to come out on top and then continue to grow after that. Like, what would your advice be to someone? Because this is similar, to the pandemic, where everything's shutting down.
Yeah.
You got looters, it's chaos.
Well, listen, you do whatever you have to survive. It was not some premeditated thing. It's
right.
like when you're faced with these things, I think your training always happens. When you're training for something, or trying to be diligent about something, or consistent with something, you're building great habits that in some cases you hope you never have to use those habits, right? You hope you never have to. But the fact that, we were always forward thinking, we were very resourceful, right? So we were presented with a problem that, hey, here's a real problem, but nobody else really cares because they've already spent this money with us. We probably had a couple of $1 million in advertising that had been spent with us. All those people are concerned about is they're disconnected from New Orleans. They want to know if their mail and their event is going to happen like it's supposed to, right? The show goes on, they say, right? No matter what's happening. And I think that's the way we've always approached things, is that, anything that comes in your way, there's always things that you could justify why you didn't succeed, or why you couldn't fulfill something, or why you couldn't, you couldn't accomplish what you wanted to accomplish. But if that's not really an option, then, I had mouths to feed. I've got, a company to run. I've got customers that we've built a lot of goodwill that are expecting us to do this, they have a lot of implications. And I don't think, I never thought about like what, it was just, all right, this is just next step.
Yeah,
this is
you're
next
like,
play.
This is what I have to do.
Next play,
Wow.
yeah. And dude, the fact that, Mike's dad jumps in and he provided us the office space, the fact that we were able to go secure housing. It was in a familiar town. Mike knew Baton Rouge like the back of his hand. And then, listen, man, I've been through a lot of adversity in my life. And when you've been through a lot of adversity, you don't really concern. Once you know you can overcome adversity, it's almost like a muscle memory. And, you just always know there's sunshine on the other side of the clouds, right? And so when you know that, it's, hey man, this is a different day than yesterday, but nothing changes just because this happens. And that's always been our mindset. It's like, okay, how do we just figure this out? And so that's what happened. And it wasn't just me, it was the team in general, man. It's just everybody was aligned. They knew what our mission was. They were very hopeful about the future. They loved the place that they worked. And so everybody went into the same mode because they were all protecting. It wasn't employees saying, who cares? That's my employer. Everybody jumped in the boat at the same time. And that's I think it was a testament to our company culture, the way that we poured into and loved our people. And, man, when you got a village, it takes a village to do any of this stuff. This is not a one-man show. And so what I try to do is instill the things that I've learned into the people that I work with, because really it's just all about the people that think the best are the ones that succeed. So, and when you know how to think, it's like losing weight. You don't just lose weight in one place. When you lose weight or when you develop a habit, that habit happens in all parts of your life. If you learn how to be more punctual, you become just a more punctual person. It's not like you can be punctual sometimes. You either are or you aren't. And that's, that's something that that's just the way that we look at that we look at things. And everybody we work with, it just seems I've gotten lucky to be able to work with people who have the same mindset that I do, and we all learn from each other. And going through adversity, and I look back at it from the time I was a little kid. I'm a Gen Xer. My mom and dad threw me to the wolves, and I learned to fend for myself out there, conflict resolute, risk analysis, all of that stuff. And and so it just kind of plays. Shannon's having a little cough, and
sorry.
That's yeah. So this is whenever you meet up against what I've found is when I meet up against adversity, after having a couple of adverse situations, sometimes you just don't think, man, am I going to even make it to the other side of that? When you just know that there's another side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and whether it's by skill or by hard work or by luck, if you just keep pressed in, one of those things are going to pop their head up, right? And who cares whether it's luck, it's skill, or if it's just you kind of push through it. The fact is that if you sit in the seat long enough, you'll overcome it.
So did you know anyone that had to, I remember these stories from whenever I was younger about, when people's houses completely flooded and they didn't get out of New Orleans in time, because wasn't there multiple warnings need to evacuate? Well, some people didn't want to or they couldn't, and so they used the Superdome to allow people to stay there.
Right. And
I remember hearing these stories, which to me, when I think of Hurricane Katrina, the first thing that comes to my mind is them singing. It was either "You Are My Sunshine" or "This Little Light of Mine" or something, and
Mm-hmm.
I was so young, but that's what I remember and I don't know if a news station put it on TV or something, but beautiful things came out of this catastrophe that was just changed New Orleans forever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
Yeah, there's always the heroes, and when you look at, I remember the videos of people getting rescued off their roofs of their house.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a weird situation that happened, because without the levees breaking, we don't have this kind of catastrophe. And by the time, the levees broke, nobody expected that. It was almost impossible to evacuate a city with this many people.
In that amount of time. Because wasn't there was warnings to evacuate, but no one could have foreseen the levee actually breaking like that.
Yeah, and then typically if you stay for a hurricane, I stayed for this last one that we had, and I don't know if I'm going to stay again because it was 150, 160 mile an hour winds whistling for 8 hours. It's man, why would I want to stay in this? But a lot of people, I think, listen, New Orleans has had all these hurricanes, and it's always the city and the officials are always kind of crying wolf because they have to. You got to get people out. You got to be extra precautious. And I think, the boy who cried wolf, they've heard it enough times and everything worked out okay. And this time they were telling him, get out, get out, get out. But then it wasn't okay this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't okay.
That just gives me chills. And then a similar thing keeps happening to Lake Charles, right? Because this past year was the second time that they got hit with this
destroyed.
Yeah.
Morgan City, all of
And
those
some
places.
businesses never got to recover because they got hit twice within the past 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
That's just crazy.
Yeah, so we had just finished building a house, Angelina and I did, in Old Metairie. And, when we left for Miami, my cars were in the driveway. And I remember I had just gotten a Range Rover, and the waves, when we actually got back to our house and saw it, my car had pushed through the garage door. So it was parked right up against the garage door, but the wave and the force of the wave, for some kind of way, moved the Range Rover into the garage door, like moved it. And so we had like 8 feet of water in our house. By the time we got in there, we hired contractors to go in and kind of gut the house, because we had, the house, we had just moved in 6 months before.
Oh my gosh.
And then we take a trip to Florida to go visit my sister-in-law, and we get a phone call from one of our neighbors that says, your house is on fire. And it literally burned, our house burned to the ground. So it flooded, and then it burned to the ground.
And then there was Katrina?
No, Katrina flooded.
It flooded from Katrina first.
And then our house burned to the ground. Yeah, and it was crazy because they said it was an arson. So Angelina, it was a year of the insurance company putting us through depositions and, questioning us, and like, there's no way. They thought that we were involved. And like, why would we do this? We don't owe any money on the house. We built it, just out of our pocket. What benefit would we have to burn our house down? But yeah, it was like a year, a little bit over a year. They made us jump through hoops. They kept bringing us to depositions. And finally they said, we apologize to you for putting you through this, because obviously you guys had nothing to do with this. And, but yeah, it was just like icing on the cake kind of thing. It's like, why would we burn our own house down?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But that my sister, so in our family, my brother Benny is 59, I'll be 57, my brother Scott's 55, and my brother Mike's 53. And then 8 years later, my parents had a little girl. And, she was like the most beautiful girl. In fact, we were raised as Catholic. And so, one day, the whole sit, stand, kneel, pray this, do this. We just didn't like it too much, And so I remember my sister had got plugged into a Bible study, so she got plugged into a Bible study, and she invited us one time to go to the Bible study, and it was where I gave my life to Christ, So my sister, besides being, like, her son just signed a scholarship with Georgia Tech. He's one of the top baseball pitchers. He throws like 93, 94 miles an hour.
Wow.
He lives in North Carolina. Yeah, I'm sure he's going to go play in the major leagues. Like, he's that kind of talent. Awesome. Yeah, but that was a tough part of it, man, just because she had such an impact on us, and she was such like a light, a shining armor, like, she was just out there. She had the mentality of her brothers, but she was a beautiful girl, and she knew how to maneuver in the man's world. She was a pharmaceutical rep at the top of her game, climbing the ladder, and just destined for greatness. And great memories, man. I was actually So it was a tough. It was a tough. I was in Baton Rouge. I remember when I got the phone call, and like, I answered the phone in the evening, and like, my family was hysterical on the other end of the phone, and I'm like, I couldn't understand anything they're saying. And finally, when I heard them, they're like, Tara's dead. I'm like, what? And so I flew out to Watercolor, because everybody was staying in Watercolor. That's where we had, we've been going down there for 20 years. And so that's where the rest of my family was down there. And so they sent, my brothers had a private plane. They sent the plane to get me and Angelina. And but that was the tough part. That was the tough part. There was, the thrill of victory and overcoming and all that stuff, man. But the people who lost loved ones in it, man, that really sucked. It really made you understand that the money and like your business, and it was so secondary to anything else, But it's all good. She's where she's supposed to be. Yeah. Yeah. So that was, man, the whole Katrina thing. So we get the server, we come back to Baton Rouge, we get it all hooked up, and then it was just business as usual, man. We got back on the horse and started running again, and I forgot how long. I think we stayed in Baton Rouge for maybe 2 or 3 couple of months, and then everybody was able to get back into New Orleans and do their thing. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, but man, 17 years ago, life-changing event for a lot of people in a lot of ways. Sorry to put such a Debbie Downer on it, you know. But it was good, man. It was you grow from all of these things, man. You just continue to push through it, and life goes on, man. That's one thing it shows you. No matter what happens, we're all just here for this small amount of time, and nobody really, you know, when you're gone, you're gone. So make the most of it while you're here.
Let's ask the audience. I'm sure many of you either knew people who lived in New Orleans or are from New Orleans. So why don't you go ahead and comment?
Yeah.
You know, either I hate to say favorite memory from Hurricane Katrina, even though it was devastating, but there were a lot of things that good that come out of it. Yeah. So maybe just comment, you know, something that has stuck with you since Hurricane Katrina in honor of its 17 years, right?
Yeah, 17 years.
Wow. So yeah, let's just.
Yep.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, thank you.